Hi, everyone. I'm Miss Celeste, and I'm really excited to come along this journey with you in ECE 202. I will be your professor for this course, so feel free to ask me lots of questions. Really just kind of dive into the text that I am going to assign, all the assignments, everything about Canvas, and really get familiar with everything that you're going to have to use throughout this course. And thereafter, if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out. I am here to support you, but please take some time to really get familiar with it because it is very simple, but also could be a little tricky if you're not familiar with Canvas and all the tools on there. So tonight we are going to focus on early childhood education. I'm just going to give a brief introduction into what that is because all of these ECE courses do focus on early childhood specifically. I do sometimes get into other age groups and dependent, on the students I have in my course. So I am open to that. So please feel free to ask questions relating to your learning environment, your classroom environment that you are currently in. That is okay. But you will hear me speak a lot about early childhood specifically. Before we get started, though, I do just want to share with you the book that we are going to be reading throughout this course, which is Nurturing Creativity, an Essential Mindset for Young Children, in their learning. So you are going to read some chapters every week. It could be from 1 to 3 chapters, depending on what the subject and course objectives are specifically. But this is such a great text just to reference in general when it comes to nurturing that creativity within you as a teacher, an educator, new or veteran teacher. I think it has some really great ways to help you create a positive mindset within the classroom, because as we all know, classrooms are very fast and every day is different and things are just ever changing. So we do have to have that consistent motivation. And I really think that this text really gives you that support to do that. In addition, we have our assignments every week that are due. They do differ throughout the week, but please always look at Canvas for due dates and specific details on each assignment. I am just going to highlight what is due this week, which is your thread discussion. That is a very, very big component and part of this course for many reasons. One, so we can collaborate, share ideas, connect with one another, because again, this is an online course. So this part is really, really effective when we all are participating, we all are sharing ideas and really taking the time to send some meaningful feedback back and forth among your peers. So please spend a lot of time on these discussions and also the feedback that you give to your peers. Just make sure that you are answering their questions and sharing some insight or new ideas, which are always helpful. Another point is the journals primarily are going to be every week, but could differ. But that's just something between you and I that you're going to be sharing on a specific topic. It could be about a chapter, it could be questions, a series of questions, open-ended questions. So a lot of it is your opinion. So I really love to kind of get to know your environment, your specific needs. So please share them whenever or always as much as possible. And so that is really the primary areas that we're going to focus on this week. And then other weeks we'll have, assignments that we will focus on. And so every week is a little different. So just make sure that you are going into Canvas and you do know what is coming next. All right, so we're going to get in it to win it, I like to say. But let's start with this Maria Montessori quote. So the goal of early education should be to activate the child's own natural desire to learn. So we want them to get excited. We want them to want to learn, right? Find a love for learning. But in order to do that, we have to allow them to do that independently, and kind of capture those moments on their own, go through the process, have all the tools there for them to be successful and learn at their own pace. So of course, there's many components to that. We really, really want children, to be excited about learning, and really enjoy it. So that first impression, which a lot of us do get the opportunity to have with some of our students, because if it's not their first time in school, sometimes it is. So again, you have many, many opportunities to do this, which is so meaningful for them and for you. So utilize those moments. So ECE education really focuses on birth to age 8. We do get into different phases of life, of course, before then. So we can always talk about, when the child's in utero and really capturing that learning, because they are developing and learning so much more than probably what we still don't know. But I'm a big believer on making sure that we are having really stimulating environments, really meaningful environments for children to be successful and learn at an early age. But it is during these phases of life that the foundations of cognitive, physical, and emotional developments are built. So we really have to capture that. This period grows at an intense rate so rapidly that learning is just coming. They're soaking up all this information that they're receiving through all the environments that they're in. So say at home, at school, with caregivers, with parents. It's constantly changing through that cycle of how we learn. But it is important to really understand that it's important to lay that foundation in a positive sense when they are going through that rapidness of a growth within that brain development, within that stage of life. We really want to continue to support this critical development by supporting every child individually, because we all learn different. We all don't learn at the same rate. We all don't comprehend things at the same time. So it's important that you find ways to really meet that child's need individually. And some would say, well, how would you do that? If you have a classroom of 12 children, how do you do that or more? Well, it's really dependent on your team of teachers and really managing that classroom time, spending time observing, and really understanding where they are individually is really by watching and spending time observing them, what they like, what they don't like, what they need support in, what they don't need support in, just really allowing them to go through that process. Another big area, of course, is just really focusing on that brain development. So how you can help your child learn and grow is really understanding how it all works. So understanding that all different parts of the brain matter. So language and touch is a whole part of the brain. The visual processing is a whole part of the brain, the balance and coordination, even from the way they're breathing, their heart rate, their hearing, their learning. There's so many components that is in, our brain, that it's important that when we are creating those connections, when children are developing, that we give them that meaningful opportunity to stimulate these areas of the brain. So ways to do that is having them in a stimulating environment, having them in a well-prepared environment, having meaningful lessons and opportunities for independence and creativity and just so many different, areas that they definitely can benefit from. And then we move on to the learning starts at birth, right? As something I just said a while back. But most of what they learn, they will learn how to do socially, emotionally, academically, and behaviorally will come through with others. So as much as they are going through that process, they are learning so much through what they do, how they do it, the process. So it's very, very meaningful to let them go through that process. ECE educators and parents play an important role in helping to shape young minds early. With important skills that will help them be successful. So we are that guide. How exciting is that? To be the guide, to be that motivator, to be that support for a child, not do it for them, but be that support so they can be successful in developing those skills. So stages of development, of course, we'll talk about fine motor, gross motor. We'll talk about the cognitive, the speech and language, and the social emotional part that I will probably talk a lot about because this is something that needs to be at the forefront, specifically social emotional. That's how we teach children to regulate their emotions. That's how we teach children to self-soothe. That's how we teach children to just manage overall their emotions when they're going through a challenge, for an example. So there's many, many opportunities for us to support these areas within the environment, which I will get into later. But of course, when we're working with children, it's important to also understand their developmental milestones, which is a big, big part of how they grow and learn. And this is also a great guide to really understand what they'll be doing next. And also a great guide of maybe if they're not doing something they're supposed to be doing. Just kind of having those creative conversations with parents to kind of get everybody involved to aid to that child's support. Because sometimes it's just, getting that balance between environments. So home and school have to be balanced and consistent and to be ran in a smooth way and for children to really gain, that support properly. But there is specific milestones that children do need to go through in order to kind of get to the next. So there's always a reason for things. There's always a reason why, we really focus on, for an example, at 6 months, we really want children to respond to other people's emotions. So we want them to hear them, see them, and feel them, right? We want them to enjoy social play and games, especially peekaboo. So we want them engaged with us. We want them to see us. We want them to be very interested in what's around them. We really want them to respond to their own needs, right? And of course, at 6 months, they're not verbally telling us, but they are in certain ways telling us in their own way what they like and don't like, right? By crying or, of course, smiling and being happy. So there is ways of communication that we should and, capture. And then we move on to 2 years old, which of course it gets a lot more verbal, right? We really want children to use 2 to 4 word sentences. We really want them to be specific when they need, what their needs are. If that's pointing objects to, be specific on what it is that they're asking, because at that age, they should be able to really know how to do that. When it comes to clarity, it could differ depending on the child, right? We also want them to just be more mindful of what is around them. So, and having a lot more words with that. So there's so much growing that happens. There's so much excitement that definitely is developing and connecting. And how meaningful is it to really be a part of that process, which I think is so, so wonderful. And then I'm going to touch a little bit on the social emotional health, which I think is a very, very big part of what we need to incorporate a lot more. within our early childhood classroom as teachers, because ECE educators have the important responsibility to help children learn key social and emotional coping skills. So that is something that is learned early on. For an example, separation from parents for the first time can be a struggle. That could be something that a child's never done. So how do we go through that process, right? How do we, of course, support the child, but also you can't forget about the parent. You have to definitely be there for them. We want children to be, in groups and participate and cooperate. But in order to do those things, we have to give them an opportunity to be in that space to do that. Others is learning problem solving, through compromise and sharing is very, very important. So again, early on, understanding that sharing is very important process, but also going through that process is even more meaningful. And that's something that they definitely gain either at home or at school or both. In the classroom, teachers can help children develop a sense of of independence and curiosity as they grow into their love for learning. So yes, let's get them independent. How do we do that? We let them do it. We let them go through the process. We let them try again. We let them just do it repeatedly over and over and over. We do not interfere within that process. It's okay if they make a mess. For an example, they're eating. How do they learn to eat on their own? They have to eat on their own. Of course, you're there to kind of guide them, to give them tools or a little direction if they need support, especially young children, but not to the degree of taking over and just leading that process, because then that's also taking away from their learning, which is something you do not want to do. So I encourage you to kind of really, observe and really understand where a child needs support and where they don't, and then engage. Other areas that are supported are, relationship bonds. So learning experiences and emotional interactions all affect child development. So the way that they are with others, the way others are with them, parents, and anybody within their environments does matter, because they capture those interactions, and that's how they build upon their own of how they're going to treat others, right? So that's very important. And then, of course, the impact that these teachers make is magical. So everything that you do, everything that you spend time doing every day, if that's from the lesson planning to the creating that meaningful environment, prepared environment, those are all great factors that do play into the learning. Having appropriate material for your age group, of course, being creative on finding creative tools to apply that learning depending on your group of children, which is important because that's ever changing. What you use, say, last year might be different than this year, and that's okay. Might be different from yesterday, and that's okay, because we have to really try to continue to strive to be better and to find ways, because children are going to continue to come into our classrooms, and it's important that we find the way to support them as best as we can. And of course, most importantly, laying the foundation. So when it comes to children, there is no one-size-fits-all learning style that we, guarantee academic success, right? So there's many ways that we approach that, as I just mentioned. But as education systems continue to adapt and improve to better assist students within their learning process, so much is changing, meaning the approach, the way the classroom's set up, teachers, professional development opportunities. I mean, it is, in my opinion, really getting so much better in terms of having that support, resources, even for parents, because of course, as much as the teachers need it, the parents need it as well. But because we teachers, are kind of leading that ship of being that support to parents, we really have to have those resources, right, to kind of keep up with the ever-changing world of education. So you being here today and taking this course is something that you are really, really striving to find some great creative for an example, teaching aids, within your classroom, some more support, maybe build connections. I mean, there's many reasons why we're here, right? But they all could be different. So again, I really, really am excited to get to know all of you, really excited to see how we can learn best from one another and just really dive into our learning, together. Another important part I just want to touch on is something that we hear a lot of, which is the First Five California. They talk a lot about, making sure that we're talking and reading and singing to our children, especially, in early development, because of that language development that is forming and connections that are developing. It's important that we increase that vocabulary by simply talking to our children. So I really want to strive you and challenge you to bring this within your classroom, or if you do already, give parents some weekly lessons to do within this. If that's singing certain songs that maybe you sing in the classroom, I would make a copy of what that is, send it home, and maybe that's something that they could do at night together. It's fun. Of course, the children do it in class, so it is familiar, but it's not, I wouldn't say homework. It's just a fun moment for the child and parent to have. So let's continue to increase that vocabulary. Let's really focus on having children better prepared overall, for lifelong learners, by preparing the parent to have meaningful conversations with their children, moments with their children, because I don't think we do enough of that. This is just an example of a weekly lesson plan that I just wanted to show you really quick of what a toddler lesson plan could look like. Of course, they're all different because they all don't look the same. But of course, the key areas that I want to hone in on is always making sure that within your lesson planning, you have a purpose, you have a concept, you focus on the learning areas, the developmental milestones, if that's what you want to go into. Meaning the fine motor, gross motor skills, and really kind of then feed off of that into what your activity will be, because it is very different depending on if you're an infant class, right, or a toddler class or a 3-year-old, because even by age, it could differ. But also having the flexibility to incorporate other ideas, because children don't necessarily just have to do what their age is, but can continue their learning. And I definitely encourage you to do that a lot. And then another thing to be mindful, in early education is really understanding the different philosophies that do emerge, or some that you might hear if it's not in this class or in one of my other classes, or just in education in general. Some preschools lead, their school with maybe a language immersion approach, allowing young children to, cultivate their language to develop skills. Some are faith-based, some are public school settings, some are private school settings. Some focus on a specific philosophy such as Montessori, Reggio Emilia, Waldorf, just to give some examples. So they're all very, very much different. But of course, the big purpose of all of these is really just finding a love for learning, and that's what we want to encourage when we are teaching young children. So of course, the long-term effects. So we all know that research shows that early education programs do provide positive impacts for children overall, but also just getting them ready for school, and their readiness is definitely there, when they have the experiences such as, preschool and even before that, primary school and things like that. So it's ever changing. I definitely think the opportunities for having early educations are opening up even more, which I'm so excited, to hear, because I think all children deserve an opportunity to have that learning environment and be welcomed in it within the city that they live in. And lastly, I just want to say thank you so much. I know that was a lot of information. I appreciate your time. If you have more questions, please reach out to me this week and I'll be more than happy to address them and support you individually in just really understanding your classroom environment and what your needs are. So till we meet again, I'll see you later. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.